how's everyone doing? So another day, another Q&A. My last video was the beginning of the Q&As. I answered only one question, but it was a really nice and complex question, so I needed a full video to answer it. But on this video, I have a bit of a compilation of questions because they're a little bit simpler. So you're gonna see that a lot in the channel. Some questions are gonna result in a full video. Some questions are gonna be bundled up so I can answer as much as I can. So please leave questions below for the next episodes of this, and I'm gonna do my best to answer as much as I can. Okay, so let's go into the first question. And this one is by DBM Drums. Well, I don't use Ableton, Reaper user. Let me tell you a secret here. I use Reaper as well, and it's really nice. Anyways, I was thinking maybe you could touch a little upon music theory as to is it necessary for beginners or not? I have started recording music for my band because I have the gear as of now, but I'm completely unaware of chords, scales, or anything in the composition side of things. As the drummer of the band, I only do the, badum push. I mean, should I start taking music lessons or do I jump right away to learning, mixing, and mastering? Cheers from Mumbai. Hey, cheers Mumbai. So that's a really good question actually, right? Because as a mixing engineer, do I need music theory? The short answer is no. But from what I see in your question, you don't want to just be a mixing engineer. You're in the band. You want to write the songs. You want to produce the songs. And for that, although you can do those things instinctively, if you're a very gifted person, having music theory knowledge, even if it's basic, it's really good for your arsenal. One of the things that I regret the most in my life is that I studied music theory a lot when I was younger, but I kind of slacked off when I got older, so I forgot a lot of things. They still live here in the back of my mind, but I wish I was more fluent in music theory, right? Because the thing with music theory and music is that people try to separate them, and it's impossible. Because music is music theory, you know? If your music sounds good, music theory can explain why. And if you understand why your song sounds good, it's easier to write other good songs. Do you know what I'm saying? I hope I'm making myself clear. So the short answer is no, you don't need to have music theory knowledge to be a mixing engineer, and not even really to be a musician, I would say, if you're really gifted. But why not? If you have the time to study and if you have the will to study music theory, it's only gonna help you. I'm planning on studying some music theory again because I really need to brush up my skills. But it helps a lot because sometimes you're stuck writing songs, and if you're able to touch that theoretical side of your mind, sometimes it helps you to get out of a writer's block or something like that, you know? And also, if you just want to be a mixing engineer, like you think you're just gonna go there and mix things, but actually you probably, if you want to be a good mixing engineer, of course, you can do that instinctively if you're very gifted, but there's also loads of theory you have to learn, like sound physics and just acoustics and a bunch of things that if you're a mixing engineer is nice to know, because it's gonna help you in the long run. So the short answer is no. The long answer is just learn some music theory, man. Just the basic at least, and see how you like it. And if you like it, keep going. Next question. So the next question is by TV is better. It would be great to learn more about your workflow when recording and mixing in Ableton. I think a lot of people use other DAWs for live instruments, so it'd be helpful to understand what the benefits of using Ableton are. So from what I understand, you kinda want me to talk about the Ableton point of view, like why do I use Ableton to do what I do, and kinda explain my whole process doing what I do. Ableton is the best software for writing songs, for me. At least for writing songs, because it's simple, it's blocky, it doesn't have too many buttons, and it's clean, you know? It has everything that you need inside it. It has all the outputs and inputs like clearly labeled next to everything. Everything's kind of like in the same place all the time. Ableton is very simple to look at, and once you learn it, it gets out of your way, and you can really just focus on the music. So that's why I like Ableton, because it's simple, it has everything in it, and everything's always in the same place. So that's why I use Ableton. But my process, right? What is my process? Well, the first thing is to write a song. That can be on my acoustic guitar, that can be in Ableton, that can be on a keyboard, it doesn't really matter. Write a song, first step. Second step, which a lot of bands skip nowadays because it's so easy to record music, but I always do a demo. A full demo using only Ableton stuff, the Ableton amp, the Ableton plugins. I don't really want to go into the heavier, more complicated plugins at this point, and this is one of the reasons why I like Ableton, because it has everything in it and everything stays laid out on the screen all the time. So I just use Ableton plugins, do a demo, then I have the demo done. And why is the demo important? First of all, because I practice playing and singing a song. Second of all, because I really can decide on the arrangement arrangement of the song. I experiment with the arrangement a lot as well. And with the demo, I can figure out the arrangement and just crystallize it forever. So when I go out to record, I know what I'm doing, right? And the other thing the demo is good for is that it becomes a scratch track for when you actually go to the studio. So I have my demo done. Usually I use MIDI drums to do my demo, right? So I just play some drums on my keyboard. But once the demo's done, I send it to a drummer. So one of my friends that plays drums, I send it to them. I tell them, learn this, but be really free with the drums. Because you know, the drums that I wrote on a keyboard, they're not gonna be as good as the drums written by a real drummer on a drum kit, right? I tell the drummer to be free with the drums, just do whatever he wants, learn the song and be creative with it. Once he's done learning the song and happy with what he's doing, we go to the studio together and then it's actual recording time. I always start recording with the drums because I just need the drums so much to feel the song when I'm playing. I like to perform to real sounding drums when I'm recording, you know? So the first step for me is always recording drums. And to record the drums, because I have the demo, everything's really simple because I give him the click and I give him the scratch track. So he actually has a good sounding demo to record to, and it's much better than try to make your drummer just record to a click with no scratch sounds at all, right? So he has the demo to play through it. He plays the drums, everything's good. I go back home. First thing, I edit those drums. I choose the best takes. I put everything in time if something needs to be shifted a little bit. Make the drums perfect as they're gonna be in the final song. In terms of editing, I don't mix them yet too much, just editing, right? Edit the drums. With the drums edited, I can be sure that I can perform to those drums, that they're not gonna change later. So everything that I play to those drums are gonna sound really good because I'm gonna be grooving with the drummer, right? And I can even, depending on the song, turn off the click and just play with the drums, which is really freeing, by the way. Then I record bass, record guitars, record vocals. When I'm recording these things, I'm paying more attention to the sound of things, so I'm making sure everything sounds good from the source. So my bass amp is as close to the final product as it can be. My guitar amps are sounding as close to the final guitar sound of the mix that it can be, really. I try to make everything sound as good as it can, as close as it can to the final mix. I even compress and EQ my vocals on the way in because I don't want to do so much heavy lifting in the mix later. I want my recordings to be as close as possible to the final mix and give me less work mixing later. It's always really important to pay attention to the source material. You always need good source material to have a good mix. If your source material is horrible, your mix is gonna be horrible, right? So I do all of that and everything's sounding good. It almost sounds mixed, you know? It's like, oh, I don't even know what I'm gonna do to this. The next step is export stems. Why export stems? Why not just start mixing right there in your session? I like to export stems, number one, because that's a way that you save your original recordings forever, the way they were recorded, no mixing on them, the way they were recorded, saved forever. Put them on a hard drive, put them on Google Drive, put them on Dropbox, save them forever. You got the original files there. The other reason why is that now I can drag those stems into a mixing session, and that can be in Ableton still, or it can be in any other software. So if you're gonna send it to another person to mix it, you're gonna send those stems, you're gonna be able to open them in any software, right? Or if you're mixing it yourself, you can choose to mix it in another software, or you can even just still mix it in Ableton, but have a brand new session, clean, just pristine, so you have nothing to go wrong. You import all your stems and you just use that session as a mixing session. And that way you also start from scratch in terms of processing power, because if you just imported all your stems, right, there's not gonna be any plugins, just stems. So your processor from your computer is gonna thank you so much for starting the session clean, and you're gonna be able to have a lot more freedom mixing and mixing and mixing. And it's also good to separate the writing and producing stage from the mixing stage. I like to keep things a little bit separated, although I do a lot of things by my own, which drives me crazy sometimes. I try to separate parts a little bit, just so I don't go completely crazy. Yeah, and then I mix it. That's it. I mix it in Ableton. Sometimes I mix in Reaper as well, just to make the mixing even more different from the writing process and the recording process. Just that way it separates them even further, which is nice. But I also mix in Ableton sometimes. And once I'm done mixing, I export my mix, right? And then I send it to a mastering engineer, because although I can master a little bit, I don't have a mastering environment. I'm not a master engineer, and I've been listening to that song nonstop for probably a month now. So I need a second pair of ears to take a look into that song for me. It's a peace of mind, really. You send it off, you let it go, and you just tell the mastering engineer, just do your thing, man. And then it comes back, and I post it on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, and that's it. That's my process. It was a bit long, wasn't it? Sorry. Yeah, I hope that helped you out. Next question. So the next question is by Art Freaks. Any tricks mixing low frequencies, especially when everything has distortion on it, so it doesn't get too muddy, often having a hard time hearing the drums, like the kick, when guitar and bass, both distorted, are playing together. So if you're having trouble with hearing different elements of your song when everything's playing together, it's usually a problem with placing your sounds in different spots of the sound spectrum of your song. And what I mean by that? Well, let me show you. Here on my screen, we have EQ8, right? From Ableton. You see, this is the sound spectrum of your song. From left to right, you have the low end here on the left and the high end here on the right, right? To be able to listen to everything clearly, you have to create little pockets here in this frequency spectrum. So every instrument and every element of your song has a little space for it to shine, right? So for example, you said the kick and the bass are clashing. If you're doing a basic punk song, I would say the kick has like 3 really important frequencies that you should pay attention for. The first one is around here, from 40 to 60. That's where the low end of your kick's gonna be. Low end in punk rock is not so low, it's not like sub bass like electronic music, so your kick is gonna be here around 60 and 50. And if your kick needs this space, you gotta make sure that your bass doesn't occupy this space. So how can you do that? It's easy. You EQ your bass a little bit down on those frequencies, right? The kick also needs a little bit of click at around 1K and sometimes a bit of thump around 200, but that really depends on the song. The important thing is not to battle with the bass down here, and it's not gonna battle with your vocals up here at 1K because your vocals are melodic and your click of your kick is quite of a short transient, so it's not really gonna battle it so much. So you gotta always remember, kick needs to shine around here and have just a little boost here, just to make the kick punky a little bit here, around 1K, right? If you cut the bass a little bit here to give space to the kick, the bass in punk rock usually sticks around this area here, between 70 and 100, the low end of your bass, right? Because bass also needs high frequencies in punk for the pick sound and all that cool stuff, right? But your bass really needs to shine around here. So if your bass needs to shine between 70 and 100, you can cut your kick a little bit down here so they don't clash. You know, you need to create those little pockets just so everybody has space. And your guitar clashing with your bass and your kick, that's a super big mistake, but it's super easy to solve it because the low end of a guitar, it's not meant to be super low. So you can just cut it off. Like, let me just reset this plugin here. If you need your guitars not to interfere with your bass or your kick, doesn't matter how distorted they are, all you have to do is do this. You see, this is a filter. This is a high pass filter because it lets the highs pass. You see this up here? Your guitar is really not gonna need anything under 200 Hertz, which is around here. And as we just learned, the fundamental frequencies that you need for your bass and your kick to shine are under that. So if you just cut your guitars, man, cut your guitars under 200, you're gonna see how much cleaner everything's gonna be. Don't be afraid to cut things. You also have low pass filters like this one here, which lets the lows pass but not the highs, right? So you can't be afraid to cut things, and subtractive EQ is much more important than additive EQ. You're probably trying to mix things, you're turning things up in your EQ and you're like, oh, everything just gets more messy. Try subtracting things from your EQ. Try creating these little pockets for each instrument. Remember, the kick's the low end, the bass is the low end, they both have to work together, but they don't have to be occupying exactly the same space of the low end. Start by doing this. Cut the low end of your guitars and see how much better it gets. With time, you're gonna be able also to judge better if your guitars need a little bit more low end or even less low end. When your ears develop, they kind of start telling you more what you need just to make that mix still sound like a mix and not just a bunch of like spread around instruments, you know. But you will see a big improvement if you're just not afraid of cutting things off every now and then. Filtering is a very important thing. I usually also filter my vocals around 200. I also usually create a little pocket in my guitars for my vocals, so my vocals have to occupy and dominate around 1K to 3K, right? So I turn my guitars down a little bit in that area, you know. It's really a question of getting used to mixing. That's what mixing is, creating these little pockets for your instruments so everything can be heard at the same time and still sound together. It sounds challenging and counterintuitive to have everything together but separate, but that's what mixing is, literally. It's finding that balance. I hope that helped. There's a bunch of charts, by the way, you can Google. I'll put one on the screen now, but there's a bunch of charts that show you the fundamental frequencies of each instrument. That can kind of help guide you in the beginning to find those frequencies that might be clashing. I hope that helped. And this is just the beginning of the Q&A, so I'm still getting used to it, trying to be more explainy to you. I hope I was able to. Thank you so much for watching. Please, questions down below. Press all the buttons that help me in this world out there, and I see you all next time. Thank you, and bye.